crackdown in the world's largest democracy. Police in India wielding batons, charging toward people stepping out during the lockdown, stopping cars, making people do push-ups when they break the rules, even squats. All this as Indian officials try to stop the outbreak from threatening their population of 1.3 billion. Here at home, the Senate reaches a deal on that massive $2 trillion relief package. It is set to help small businesses and push cash into the pockets of millions of unemployed Americans, but some lawmakers still have reservations. The U.S. has more than 60,000 cases, about half of them here in New York. The number of hospitalizations is outpacing predictions in America's COVID epicenter, but there are glimmers of hope about the effects of social distancing. This as more than half of America's states have now shut down non-essential business. And overseas, Prince Charles has tested positive for COVID-19. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for streaming with us. I'm Lindsay Davis. Look, we look forward to the day when we can report something different. But once again, coronavirus cases continue to rise. The New York governor said that hospitals here will soon have more patients than beds, and coronavirus infections are not expected to peak for another 3 weeks. And a sight that no one wants to see in any city, tented makeshift morgues set up in New York City, officials say, just in case. Now, these are certainly peculiar and scary times. Normally, states advertise what they have to offer, hoping to lure tourists in and have visitors come visit. But now Hawaii is asking tourists to stay out for an entire month. Alaska is imploring outsiders to quarantine for 14 days, and Florida is telling anyone from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. But the good news, because looking for silver linings has become increasingly important for all of us. Today, the New York governor said that early indications suggest social distancing appears to be slowing the spread of the virus. ABC's Tom Yamas starts us off.
Tonight, a grim sign this pandemic is far from over. Teams setting up a makeshift morgue outside of New York's Bellevue Hospital, something they did during 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy. Overnight, at least 5,000 new cases in the state. At one hospital alone, 13 people dying in just 24 hours. The hospital saying the virus is taking a terrible toll. But tonight, one sliver of hope. Extreme social distancing measures may be working. The rate of hospitalization slowing slightly.
This is a very good sign and a positive sign. Again, I'm not 100% sure it holds or it's accurate, but the arrows are headed in the right direction.
But Governor Cuomo says we're still weeks away from hitting the peak in New York City. A scenario which could collide with the president's new timeline, proposing to ease restrictions by Easter Sunday. That's April 12th.
What a great timeline this would be. Easter is our timeline. What a great timeline.
But even the nation's top health experts recommending not committing to any date.
That's really very flexible. We just had a conversation with the president in the Oval Office talking about, you can look at a date, but you got to be very flexible. And on a literally day by day and week by week basis, you need to evaluate the feasibility of what you're trying to do.
New York, the epicenter in the U.S., still in need of more space and more supplies. 4 field hospitals underway and still in need for those critical life-saving devices, ventilators. The governor announcing 11,000 are on the way, but he needs a total of 30,000. Cuomo saying they may do what Italy did, split the ventilator. 1 device, 2 patients.
We're exploring splitting, where 1 ventilator could do 2 patients. Italy has had to do this because they were forced to do it.
Those ventilators desperately needed for patients like 25-year-old Jack Allard from New Jersey, who is in a medically induced coma.
This virus is really dangerous. He's very, very sick.
The 26-year-old former lacrosse player woke up with backaches and a fever nearly a week ago.
He never vaped. They were asking us that. He never vaped. He never smoked. He took his health very seriously. He's an athlete.
Jack's doctors now trying an experimental drug for Ebola, his family hoping it will save him. In New York City, 46% of coronavirus cases are people aged 18 to 44, the virus hitting all ages. 62% of deaths are men, and 54% of people who die from the virus are over 75. That's why in Woodbridge, New Jersey today, more than 90 residents had to be transferred from an outbreak inside this nursing home. The U.S. Naval Hospital shipped the Mercy heading towards Los Angeles today. The medical crew on board preparing beds and equipment to handle a surge of up to 1,000 patients offshore. And tonight, a new effort to help from North Carolina to Colorado. Veterinarians now donating medical equipment, including ventilators.
This is just one more example of the One Health and us being able to partner with our colleagues on the human side.
New hot zones now popping up across the country. Tonight, disaster declarations for Texas and Louisiana. In New Orleans, Mardi Gras, just weeks ago, a celebration with massive crowds and days of partying may be one reason the coronavirus is now spreading faster here than anywhere else on the planet.
My EMS department, over 50% of my people are now on quarantine. And so while we have unlocked additional resources at the state level, the state can no longer go on without federal assistance at this time.
And the virus now taking its toll on first responders.
It's very personal. Each and every day I get a report and the numbers climb.
In New York, more than 200 members of the NYPD have been infected with the virus. In Detroit, at least 2 officers have died. And for the Army of Americans working to keep up with a new surge in home deliveries, cases of the virus now reported in 9 Amazon warehouses.
And Tom Llamas joins us now. Tom, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo today said that his state is the hot spot right now, that it needs resources, but it's prepared to then help other states when they become the new hot spots.
Yeah, that's right, Lindsay. He's been saying this for a couple of days now. Essentially, he wants to make sure they can fix this problem here. They can help out in the pandemic. And once they learn everything they can, and once other hot zones start popping up, like in Louisiana, then they can transfer some of the equipment, transfer some of the knowledge, and hopefully help out other states throughout the country.
And let's go now to some of that hopeful news that hospitalization rates are slowing in New York because of social distancing. Is that trend expected to continue?
Yeah, you know, it's a small silver lining, and Governor Cuomo, every night he tells me he looks at all the stats, he looks at all the data, and then he presents in those news conferences the next day. This is one silver lining he mentioned. The hospitalization rate went slightly down, but again, he still says we're nearly 2 to 3 weeks from the peak of all the cases when they hit the hospitals, so we're still very, very early, at least here in New York City, in this pandemic. Lindsay?
Nonetheless, we will take that silver lining. Tom Llamas, thank you. For more Americans, this pandemic is no longer just about statistics, but about real people in their families and their lives. The victims of COVID-19 are now both young and old, previously healthy, and those with other medical conditions. Adding to the enormous heartbreak, many of the sick are now physically separated from their loved ones, fighting this battle in isolation. And in other families, the virus already has spread. Our Matt Gutman shares these heart-wrenching stories.
Tonight, a 17-year-old boy from outside Los Angeles has become the youngest person in the country to have died after contracting COVID-19.
Every kid in this community, they're grounded. People have got to stay home. I am not going to lose another child in the city.
The CDC is tonight looking into the cause of the teenager's death. His father, an Uber driver, also infected. And in San Diego, 2 infants testing positive. And a warning from doctors tonight.
So patients are coming in commonly with many different complaints, but most often fever, cough, and shortness of breath. I think the thing that's really interesting is that patients are also coming in with nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, which isn't really something that we would expect with these respiratory illnesses.
And across the country, chilling firsthand accounts of similarities. Terry Chaseley's in her 40s and active until the virus colonized her lungs.
I was at the gym working out, and then fever and nausea kicked in.
Within days, she was hospitalized.
Well, I've had it going on. This is my 16th day now.
The whole time, she hasn't seen her husband and 3 kids.
He leaves food at the door. I have FaceTimed with my family, and my kids leave notes and little crafts for me at the door. But I have not touched them or spent any time with them this entire quarantine.
One of the symptoms, a loss of smell, which also happened to Yvette Paz.
But one thing that I did notice that changed, I completely lost my sense of smell.
And it got much worse. The 30-year-old Army vet was hospitalized. She was released and actually felt better until the virus triggered pneumonia. Finally, she says doctors put her on an anti-malarial drug called hydroxychloroquine as part of a clinical trial. In Missouri, 5 family members you see in this picture got the virus. First, matriarch Jane Winehouse. Then her son Jason, his brother, sister-in-law, and father Mike. All of them falling ill, 3 of them suffering pneumonia. The virus also spreading through Erica Cave Miller's family. Speaking to ABC's Start Here podcast, she describes the agony of losing her husband Jermaine just days before his 45th birthday.
I felt so helpless, and I'm sitting there like, what am I supposed to do? He needs somebody there with him. He needs somebody praying over him. He needs somebody there, but again, couldn't do anything.
Once he tested positive, doctors separated Jermaine from their 2 kids and from Erica. She never got to say goodbye.
Such difficult stories to hear. We're joined now by Matt Gutman. And Matt, you report that a COVID-19 patient, Terry Chaseley, felt better, then fell sick again. Is that something that you're hearing about, waves of illness?
We are. People are calling it the roller coaster effect.